Okay, Kuyan, you can continue.
Okay, so just as we said, it defines the weight of each edge, and here by using the mediators, they prevent the hyper-GCA, and which is greater than the one hyper-GCA. And the next variation is the first hyper-GCA. It's just use the initial features X matrix and without the weights. So they don't use weights to construct the hypergraph Laplacian matrix here. And
hold on, Kuyan. So can you go back? So the what's the difference between hyper-GCN with one hyper-GCN? Just the introduction of the intermediate.
Yeah, just add these informations.
But then once they add these edges, they just construct a graph Laplacian and doing the same.
Yeah, correct.
Model structure.
Yeah. They
Okay.
only use the ignored nodes to construct the mediators and use it back.
But what's their weights for the? Oh, so the weights for the IE and JE will be just 1 over E. And the weights on the edges connecting a pair of the intermediate, a pair of mediator node and say IE and JE is 1 over 2 size E minus 3, right?
Yeah, this is not using mediators, and this is using mediators.
But using mediators for IE and JE, you still use the weight 1 over size E, right?
Yeah. It's kind of use the old hyperedge weights and to add this one. And I'm also confused about how to actually use this because the paper didn't give any formula here for this one. So I also have
just because you got weights on those edges, right? When you compute to the Laplacian graph Laplacian, you just replace. So you know, adjacent matrix. If your edge, if your edges don't have any weights, you just place it as 1, right? If your edge has some weights, you just replace 1 by the weight.
Yeah, but my understanding is that this weight is it's about the mediators weights, and it shouldn't to replace the old hyperedge weights, right? I'm not sure if they add them or just replace. I'm not sure about that.
So you are not sure if so you're not sure if they put 1 over size of E here? Is that your question?
Oh, so okay, I got it. So they did replaced it. Okay. Okay.
Right, my understanding that okay, you still find this IE and JE.
Yeah.
But you put 1 over size of E here, right? But for every edge between one mediator node and IE or JE, it will be 1 over 2 size of E subtracted by 3, right?
No, in this in this picture, this also should be this one because the width on each edge is this. Yeah.
Also, they use the same edge weight.
Yes, because because if we have the 3 nodes here and 2 vertices and 1 mediator, and we have 3 edges, right? 1, 2, and 3. And here is 2 times 2 minus 3, so it's 1 over 4 or 1 over 3. 2 times 3 minus 3. Yeah, it's 1 over 3. It should be on each edge's weight.
But if every edge has the same weight, it is equally to saying that no weights, right?
So I'm thinking about the weights here is only for mediators, not the hyper-HC weights.
Yeah, what is hyperedge weight?
It's a
Yeah, I think the paragraph here is saying that when adding one connecting mediators, the correlated edge will be this many, right? 2e, 2 size e is -3, so the weight of each mediator's edge is this guy.
I think they are different. The E over here is not constant. It depends on the age between the original nodes.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. It can vary across different hyperedges, but I still believe that these edges will have different weights from this edge. But anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, and in the paper, I think here has a it's a weight for each hyperedge in the Laplacian with medial sum to 1. It's a kind of assumption here. And for the fast hypergesian, it's just use the initial features X, and they don't use the weights here to construct the hypergraph Laplacian matrix, and use this to just training and has much less time. They use much less time to train the fast hypergesian, and also. In these variations, it is better than one hypergesian, and you can see the result comparison in this 3 kind of version, and one hypergesian is the worst, and the hypergesian is kind of have a better performance here.
So how does it use the feature to construct the hypergraph?
You mean use feature to construct the X?
Initial features X, right?
Yeah.
How to use that to construct hypergraph Laplacian?
I can give some comments here. The initial feature X is actually the signal S. If you can go back to the previous slide to show how to build the. No, next.
Here.
Yeah, this slide. You can see here the S is just your node feature about the graph. So in the simple graph, I mean not the hypergraph, the Laplacian matrix is something is independent to your node feature. You just use some connection to build your Laplacian, and when you want to use your Laplacian to do some like the feature transition or feature transformation, you just use your Laplacian to multiply your node feature, and then you'll get something. However, here the Laplacian matrix for the hypergraph is something defined or related by your node features. So how you build the AES here? I can make some make some notation on the things. Can you see my pen?
Yeah, sure.
So you see this form, the I minus here's the definition about the hypergraph Laplacian. And actually here is the L. I mean the double L. And actually if you compare these things to the simple graph, it's defined as the IAD, something like this one. So recall in the simple graph, these things, the definition about your Laplacian is independent to your signal, to your node feature. However, in this definition, the building of your Laplacian right here is related or determined by your node feature, by the signal. And why they define something like this one? Because actually in the graph, when you get a Laplacian is not only a matrix, it's also something like an operator. It's something just mapping from your graph feature to some other feature. So right here, it's directly given a definition about how you can use your super graph Laplacian to do the transformation on your current feature. The transformation itself is also defined by your node feature, by your signal. So that's the idea here. So Laplacian about the hypergraph is defined, is determined by your node feature of your current hypergraph. Is that clear?
Yes, that's clear.
Yeah, and clear. If you go back to the next slide, maybe next, maybe last previous up. No. Yeah, go to the how to define the AS. Next. Yeah, that one. That's the one. Yeah, this one. So how this procedure just show you how you just build your hypergraph Laplacian to get this one. So actually, if you want to get something, get the hypergraph Laplacian, the first thing is how to define the adjacent matrix for your hypergraph. So the idea here is for each graph, hypergraph, for each hyper edge E, I just use the node feature here, and I just find because for each hyper edge, there are maybe some or there are plenty of the vertex or node included in the edge. And then the goal for the first step is I want to transfer each hypergraph to transfer each hyper edge to a simple edge. And how you just do the transformation, or how you define this is I just go through every pairwise connection pairwise connection in this including by the hyper edge, and then I just compute the gap of their energy or gap of the feature, and then select the pair of the one who has the most significant gap on this feature, and then I just transfer this hyper edge to a simple edge. And this simple edge is only defined on IJ, and other maybe the connection or other connection of the node, including the hyper edge, they're ignored, they're dropping. I just transfer each hyper edge to a single edge. That's the idea here. So after the precision one, you can get the you just remove every hyper edge and you get some single edge, and then based on that you compute the AS, and then you can compute the Laplacian about the hypergraph, and then you can define the hypergraph Laplacian and this transformation over this. So all this computation, how you just transfer a hypergraph to a graph, or how to build an adjacent matrix for a hypergraph is all defined or related by the node feature given at the very beginning. So that's the idea here.
Yeah, so if SI and SJ are feature vectors, so here, this cannot be the absolute value, right? This can be like some kind of norm.
Yeah, it is you can define the norm actually. So the connection about it is the transformation about this from the hypergraph to the simple graph is defined by the feature value or the node value.
Yeah.
So if we move from hyper JSON to JSON, yeah, the thing is now still unclear is that how do they so the fast hyper JSONs use feature matrix to construct to convert hyper edge to simple edge, right? Perhaps including some mediator nodes. But in the hyper JSON, so they use for the hyper JSON, they use the hidden layer representation to construct hyper edge.
Yeah, somehow like this, because if you follow this way, I mean, the first hyper JSON, consider you have the hypergraph is like hyper edge like this, you have 4 nodes in this. And actually, when you do the transformation, you only retain, you just get this one. And other connection is totally ignored. So it's something like you dropped the important message. And for the hyper JSON things, actually, we still finally want to build this, transfer this hyper edge to a single edge, this one. However, when I build this, I use the less about the node in this hyper edge as they're called the mediators. And there's something like maintain the connection information when you build this one.
You use what?
So just consider for the one hyper JSON, we have the hyper edge here, the 4 node here. And however, when we apply this procedure, finally all the things is removed. We only retain this simple edge. However, with the idea about the hyper JSON, I mean, what Ke-Yan just have a graph here, we still think they're connected, of course. Okay, sorry. They're connected, but this connection is what we want. But we still get something like the connection like this one. And it sounds like have to maintain the smoothness or maintain the information about the connection in this. Because if we do this one, you just maintain this, have this one and ignore others. It's too, I mean, it goes too much. You just ignore other information about the connection. But if we maintain this one, we can still have some connection information along
Yeah,
this.
that's why the mediator nodes are introduced. I mean,
yes.
In the hyper JSON, Ke-Yan mentioned the AS can vary along with the number of epochs.
Yes, because your AS, how your AS define, like follow this way, is based on your node features. And your node features, I think, is something like they're going to changing.
The node features got updated each epoch.
Yeah, yeah. So your node feature is updated. So your adjacent matrix is changing, and the hypergraph. The hypergraph Laplacian is also changing. So the connection is also changing along the updating of your feature node or node features.
Yeah, but how do you update the node features?
I think it's
like they have like say per node feed-forward network. First do some feature transformation and then use a transform feature to construct this hyper edge, construct this hyper graph.
I think you give some initial value about their node features, and then you update your node feature, update your corresponding weighting matrix, and your connection about your I mean the Laplacian is also updating along your updating your node features.
Yeah, I mean the problem is that how do we update that? My imagination is that okay, for each, say suppose this is your original feature, right? SI is a vector. You might just apply some neural network for that, right? So that's your transformed node feature, and use that to convert the hyper edges into single edges.
So you update your, I mean the W here. I mean the
W is kind of like some weights you need to learn.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know why their AS can vary along with time, along with epochs.
Shannon, do you remember the paper just Zheng just posted is for his neural networks? They use the dynamic graph to model the temporal tensor or something. I think the idea here is very similar to that one. You post the initial value on the graph, and the graph, its structure, its connection is determined by the node features. And based on these node features, you can use these rules to define the connection on the graph. And you see the things, the time are varying.
The reason I don't know the node features, you're learning embedding for the node features. And here
we cannot,
you have observed node features.
Well, we cannot just learn the node features.
Well, what's your point, Shibo?
So SIJ, just the node features, they are parameters.
Yeah.
So why we need to assign additional neural network to it to?
No, here the problem is that I want to know classification, right? So setting is that okay, I got a hypergraph.
Yeah.
And I observed a feature vector at each node. I'm gonna make prediction for every node. Like for example, I want to classify each node. That's the basic setting.
Okay. So node features, the node features are observable.
Yeah, this is a basic setting for graph neural network. You're assuming you collect a set of features for every node, and every node has some labels, right? You want to learn from the graph data, and you want to predict the labels for some nodes which have observed features, but you don't know the label.
Yeah, then we can
This is not embedding learning. Well, you
okay.
just,
okay.
That's why I'm it's unclear. Like Ke-Yen should figure out like how my guess is that okay, this is no feature, right? You're gonna first do some feature transformation, say through a feed-forward network. You got some latent feature representation, or you call embedding as well, right? And then you calculate this argmax and to pick up two vertices and connect them. Then the follow-up question is that okay, once you suppose you got some neural network to get such kind of representation, then you construct the normal graph to represent the hypergraph. Now, is there any hidden layer? I mean, additional hidden layer? Cannot have any additional hidden layer, right?
No.
Right. So for the normal GCN, you can have like 2 hidden layers, 3 hidden layers, because they are all based upon the same graph structure. Or it's kind of like once you got, I'm not sure, maybe in the second layer, in third layer, you got a different graph than the second layer, right? Because for every layer, your node representation changes as well.
I think I'm not very sure, but it's maybe the the signal is equal to some the weighted multiply the current the XP. XP is something like the your fixed feature.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. But the problem is that okay, if you're doing this, how many layers would you like to construct for your model, right? So you have the hypergraph at the layer 0, right? And now through some feed-forward linear layer, you got feature transformation. From that, you can convert the hypergraph into a normal graph, right? Now you define your hypergraph Laplacian over that, and then you can compute the representation of every node for next layer, right? The representation changes, so is their so is this, right? And the graph structure can vary as well, and you have a different hypergraph Laplacian in the next layer, right? You can do it to the next layer until you finally generate the prediction score, right?
Yeah.
And all those intermediate nodes, I mean, they can be applied at any layer.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think the task here is you want to use the final alert, the signal on the list to do the classification on the node. So of course, the node feature, node representation is changing, and how it's changing is modeled by this hyperGCN, is modeled by the connection about the hypergraph or the graph or the adjacent or the Laplacian here.
Yeah, Ke-Yan, you should figure out those problems, right? You
Yeah.
should figure out these details here. This is currently our discussion just gives our best guess here.
Yeah, I will figure it.
Yeah, so yeah, why not you just jump to the results section.
Yeah, so so here it's just show the hyperGCN is better than the other two, and and also in the it shows that the first hyperGCN is better than the first hyperGCN. So it shows that the mediator is much more important than the weights, because the first hyperGCN didn't use the weights to construct the hypergraph Laplacian matrix.
Yeah, actually, there's a very straightforward approach. Why do they pick up a pair of the vertices who has the largest difference of the signal, right? Why not just construct a clique over the vertices in each hypergraph, each hyperedge? Like for example, if I got an edge, hyperedge, which connect the three nodes, right? Why not just break this hyperedge and just connect these three nodes pairwisedly?
Actually, you can do this. Actually, I think it's the most straightforward and classical the method to treat the hypergraph to a single graph. You just for each hyperedge, you just do the all connected, the fully connected, the edge between this, and if some node is included in different hyperedge, and they have different weight, and just sum them together. This is something very classical and old. I think it's proposed maybe 20 years ago, and people may think it's too expensive.
Yeah, do they compare? Is it expensive? I don't think it's expensive. Do they compare with this simple approach?
You mean the time, the training time?
The accuracy. I mean, if I do this right, I'm just break the hyperedge into cliques, right? And I just assign the weight to be 1 size of hyperedge. I immediately get the Laplacian. I immediately get to the graph Laplacian. I can compare with at least fast hyperGCN, right? Because fast hyperGCN builds up the graph just from the data, right?
Yeah. They didn't show that. They only show these two, the comparison between these two.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, to me, this method, I mean, their proposed method is just some heuristic, right? Just some heuristic, but the benefit is that they introduce the data, right? Introduce the data to decide the edge, right? Because they pick up the edge according to the maximum discrepancy of the feature set. But other than that, I don't see any rationale of doing this.
One possible reason for this, if you do this very trivial and classical, I mean, transfer a hypergraph, hyper edge to some fully connected subgraph, then finally you will get a almost fully connected graph for each node. I mean, just imagine you have thousands of nodes and there's some hypergraph there, and finally you follow this way. So finally, the simple graph you get is very close to a fully connected graph. So if you do some message passing or something on this graph, you will get something they call the over smooth or something, because every node is connecting. So the message passing is something like trivial. I think that may be the reason people don't want to just do this.
That depends on the graph, right?
But you follow this way.
If you can recall, actually the paper we wrote with John is using this approach.
That's kind of different, because that graph we define called we separated to 3 parts, and the node in current parts they didn't connect it. So connection only happens between different modes of different parts.
The reason is because this is tensor data. You do not assume that the nodes in the same mode will connect to each other. But the so-called multipartite hypergraph is you're gonna, for each interaction, right, is the hyper edge, right? You're essentially connecting them together.
Yeah.
That's why I said this really depends on the graph, right? And I think in practice the hypergraph itself should be pretty sparse. Right? You add a few bunch of edges, that won't cause your graph to be fully connected.
Yeah, that I don't know. But actually, when I propose the ideal for the talk you're just talking about, I mean the ideal, because one question just make me confused is how to define the Laplacian matrix for hypergraph. I mean, this way, I mean, John do or we did in that paper is something very trivial. I mean, the most straightforward. However, and that way, I'm thinking about some more clever and more maybe the feature related the definition about the hypergraph, the Laplacian for the hypergraph. And I think the hypergesian or something gives some maybe some iteration. We can try to use the feature and to define the connection, but not only how to on the initial their observation.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, okay. One thing I think your I kind of understand your concern. Like, if we're doing this, then for the large hypergraph, that would be a disaster.
Yeah.
Suppose you have 10 nodes in your graph, then if the hyper edge contains 9 nodes, then all the 9 nodes are fully connected to each other.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Keyan, do you have any more slides?
No, that's all. And no.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. This is your first time doing the presentation, so I want to make some comment.
Okay.
Yeah. So thanks for your reading this paper. I think you do understand the main point of this paper, but the problem is that we not only want the main point, we want critical thinking. That's why we keep asking the details.
Yeah, I know.
So you should read as when you read this, you should ask similar questions like me or like Shibo or like Shikai asked. And if you cannot figure out details, just tell us. I cannot find any answers from the paper. That's fine.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, you need to. This is not like I'm gonna skim through this paper and look at what it's doing. You should think critically and find out the problem. And nowadays, like people write papers, they always want to hide something, right? They want to hide their weakness. They want to hide some details. They want to hide this. Well, they want to hide that. Like the paper, the decomposition structure learning paper presented by Zhitong this morning, right? Yeah, I think they are trying to hide how the cost of finding the decomposition structure, right? So, yeah, you should capture this kind of point so that you can get some very deep understanding. Then we may figure out a way to, address the problem.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so hypergraph, I did some like a quick review in the summer. I feel that the major issue, right? The major issue is how you construct a graph Laplacian. So the standard steps will be, okay, I'm gonna first convert it into a plane graph. And then I use the Laplacian definition on that plane graph to as the graph Laplacian over the original hypergraph. Right? That's the standard procedure right now. So the only difference is how you're gonna convert the same hypergraph into different plane graphs, right? You can come out a lot of tricks, like different tricks, like for example, the most straightforward way will be, okay, just convert a hyper edge into a maximum clique, right? Or you can pick up like edges here, like you make a connection and over the pair of nodes who has the largest feature discrepancy, right? So there are a variety of choices. But an interesting question is that, can you define a hypergraph Laplacian operator directly based on the hypergraph itself rather than any converted graph? Right? Yeah, that's something fundamental. Okay, any comments? Okay, thanks. Let's stop early today. And Zhitong and Keyan, please send your slides to Shibo.
Okay.
I will post your slides to our group seminar website.